Testing.
Testing. 1, 2, 3. This is episode 5, take 1. Could you imagine if we had to do a take 2?
Oh, God.
So welcome to the 5th episode of the 13th Sign podcast. We're your hosts, Billy and Elise, and we are welcoming you to this wonderful episode. We're going to be diving through the solar system, exploring each and every one of our beautiful celestial planets. Pluto is a planet. We will be talking about her.
We love Pluto.
We love Pluto.
We're not going to leave her out.
No. So, yeah, we're going to be going through the planets today, what each of them mean, so you guys are able to, like, obviously we talked about, like, the energy of each sign. So if you look at your chart now and you know what each of your planet signs are, now you'll be able to match the sign with the planet and get a greater understanding. But to disclose again, we are not astrologers. We literally have a book, some websites up, and our brains, which are probably the least reliable thing that's contributing. And we're going to be trying to give you guys a little bit of an explanation of each planet. But obviously, if you want to gain your own interpretation, totally recommend doing your own research and so you can gain a greater understanding. We're just going to be going over the basics and, yeah.
So just for reference, our references are Astrology by Yasmin Boland. I hope I'm saying that right. And also masteringthezodiac.com.
Mm-hmm. And I'm also using Time Passages. They have like a learning section, which so I'll be going through that as well, getting their perspective and also throwing in our own.
Also, if you haven't downloaded Time Passages, what are you doing with your life? Please download it right now.
Right now.
They've got a free version. Definitely would recommend, if you're really into astrology, buying the ultimate version.
Yeah, I'd been holding off for so long because I just didn't want to do it. But
it's changed my life.
Yeah, it's changed my life too, because I'll be talking to my mum and I'll do her chart, my brother's chart, dad's chart, and all of that, all individually, and then we'll just be talking, and she'll be like, "Oh, what's your dad's Venus in?" or a random thing, and I'll be like, and then I'll talk about what my dad's Venus is in, and then she'll be like, "Oh, what's mine?" and I'll be like, just give me 10 minutes to type in all of your information again into Cafe Astrology, look it up, and then go through and read everything again. Whereas if you get the download version, you get everything that you can just click through, and it's so much easier.
Yeah, and you can add
this
all of your friends.
We're not getting paid.
Not sponsored. Although, please, Time Passages sponsor us. But yeah, it's really handy, especially when you're doing all your friends and you can do compatibility.
As soon as you post a Mercury retrograde meme on your Instagram, people will be asking you what that means and how that affects them personally, as if you're an actual astrologer, and
you're like, I just liked this meme.
Yeah, I just thought it was funny. I just thought it was funny. It had a celebrity on it making a weird face. But yeah, we'll start with the sun.
Everyone knows the sun.
It's shining bright now, providing us all light. So
your sun is essentially you, yourself. It represents your ego. It shows your level of confidence and where your focus is in this lifetime. The sun is in many ways the driving force in your chart. It is the center of the planetary system, the giver of light and life. It's heroic and it likes to take center stage. Wherever the sun is in your chart, in a particular sign and house, which we'll get into houses in the next episode, it tells you a lot about what you came to do here on planet Earth. It also tells you how and where you shine. As you discover more about your sun, you'll discover more about yourself. It also tells you a lot about your central concerns.
The sun's pretty basic. It only gives us
It only gives us light. It's only the source of everything.
Yeah, only without it we wouldn't exist, but that's fine. Next we have the moon. So the moon represents the personal self, the feelings, and the unconscious. It's a reflection of the true self represented by the sun. The moon also stands for security and instinctual or habitual patterns, as well as the ability to relate to others and to be nurturing others. The moon rules Cancer It is often contrasted with the sun as the female representative principle versus the masculine or positive principle. The moon represents the feminine or nurturing part of oneself. In the male chart, the moon represents the feminine within, or the amania, and also indicates the type of partner you will attract. The moon also represents an attune from the past, which operates at an instinctual or habitual level of your present life.
Interesting. So yeah, like with your son, like who you present to the world, I guess. So your moon is like who you really are, like under the surface.
Because like your moon's always tied to your emotion.
Mm.
But as we were kind of talking about before, some people don't have like emotions in the same way that a water sign has emotions. And so for other people, it can be like the internal self and how that affects external physical reactions. So like my moon's in Gemini, and I feel like I'm only just beginning to really understand what that means. And I think the moon is like one of those things that it's like, if you have like a Capricorn with a Pisces moon, you might never know that they have a Pisces moon. They hide it all so well. So it's like internally they're such an emotionally connected person, but they just don't portray any of that on the exterior. So I think the moon is one of the most interesting things to know about a person, because you can really understand like, oh, even though you're really big and tough and like not intimidated by anything on the outside, internally, like if I say something mean to you, externally you'll laugh it off and pretend that it's fine, but I know now that internally it'll actually offend you, so I'm not going to do it.
Yeah.
Whereas you could have someone on the other side of the spectrum that's a Pisces sun and a Capricorn moon, so externally they'll be like, oh, you can't say that and start crying, but like internally they really don't give a shit. Yeah. So I think the moon is really interesting, and it allows you to like understand people, but you need to ask people. Like if you meet someone that doesn't have the same moon as you, ask them like deep questions about it, so then you actually can understand it. Because that's what I've been doing a lot lately, and I've been finding it really interesting, and I've been learning a lot about myself through that reflection as well, because it's like your emotions, everyone just sees like as a reaction, like an external thing that's happening, but there's like so many deeper things that internally that cause the physical reaction to happen. So I think I just find it so interesting. Sorry, I'm going on this.
Right. So yeah, knowing your own or someone else's moon sign gives you massive insights into yourself and them. The moon is about our inner nature. In your chart, it tells you what you need. If you look at someone's moon sign and the house, which we'll get to another point in time, you can instantly understand more about what they need. The moon in your chart can also tell you about your home, how you grew up, how things were with your mother, about what feeds you, about your feelings, your unconscious, and your instincts.
With the moon, you can just remember that it's like affects the tides and stuff, and it's a very much a feminine energy. And I think that all of the like celestial, like planetary bodies, I think that they all have such a personality. With like Jupiter,
it's very external, like
like I feel like I know Jupiter, like, and I feel like I know Venus, but like I feel like each of them you can kind of get to know them as like a person. Like don't just think of them as like a planet that's 1,000 million kilometers away, that's like you can't even see. Like really think about the spiritual energy behind each one and what that really means, and to get to know them, apart from just looking at them as like, oh, this is a gas giant.
I find it's really handy as well to think about them and where like their name and stuff comes from, like with Greek mythology and stuff like that.
Greek mythology, it like I don't understand how they got it so accurate with like naming the planets, and then the planets tie to astrology. Like, I don't know whether an astrologer named every planet, but like blows my mind.
Literally. It's wild that like it's so accurate, and it continues to be so accurate
through like generations and generations.
Yeah. It's wild.
Yeah, it's wild.
Anyways.
But anyway, onto Mercury.
So Mercury is the communications planet. Whenever you open your mouth to talk, or when you write something, or even if you just think or listen to someone, you are using your Mercury. It's the mind planet, and it guides how you talk, write, and otherwise express yourself and take in information. It's your intellectual process. The sign and house Mercury is in will tell you how you think and express yourself, and even how you negotiate. Mercury is also the transport planet and the planet of short journeys and commuting. It also governs trade and commerce. So this is sometimes when people say, like, during Mercury retrograde. So if you don't know what retrograde is, it's when a planet's literally moving backwards.
Well, they're not moving. It's not moving backwards. It just looks like it's moving backwards
Yes.
to us.
Yeah.
Planets don't move backwards. They're always moving forward. But
Yeah. So that's what retrograde means. So it's like, as it's moving forward, in its normal.
All of the energies are moving forward, and all of the energies are like in like a positive sense.
Yeah, and we're continuing on our path, blah blah blah.
Yeah.
But Mercury retrograde, when your planet is in retrograde, it's sort of like going backwards, and sort of like if you haven't worked through something, it's going to bring that up.
Yeah.
So yeah, as I was saying before, it deals with transport, and journeys and commuting, and that's why sometimes people say, don't travel during Mercury retrograde. Don't text your boss and say something, like, just be careful with communication. Be careful with travel.
Everything can kind of be misconstrued. A lot of things can be like
hidden. It's still fine for you to travel, but they usually just recommend
we don't
double checking things, making sure you're not going to you're not going to lose your passport.
Checking that your boarding pass is under your name. Like all stupid little shit
little
like that.
Random things
and because
can go wrong.
In more modern times, it also is like what we symbolize for technology. So it's like every time Mercury is in retrograde, my GPS fucks up and I get lost, or like my computer crashes at work and then I have to go home, like all of that stuff. But the Time Passages has a lot of the like ancient Greek stuff as well. So I might just read that to give you guys a bit more of an insight. It says, tiny Mercury is the innermost and smallest planet of our solar system and can only be seen at morning and evening. Because of this, the ancient Greek astronomers believed that the planet to be two separate parts, one visible in the morning, which they called Apollo, and one visible in the evening, which they called Hermes. Later, the Romans named the planet after the god Mercury, the messenger and the god of trade, profit, and commerce. So literally everything that Elise just said. So yeah, that's a little bit of a backstory on Mercury, and it also rules Gemini and Virgo. So yeah, because obviously Geminis talk all the fucking time.
Okay, so next up is Venus.
Mm-hmm.
Venus is all about romance and riches. It's your love planet.
My favorite planet.
Venus guides you when you fancy someone, when you fall in love, and when you yearn for someone or something from the bottom of your heart. So matters of the heart are dealt with this beautiful, kind, and caring planet. Venus is about pleasure, kindness, and caresses. Well, in her highest form, Venus is about perfect and ideal relationships. How you relate to others depends a lot on your Venus and how you fall in love. Venus is about attracting. Your Venus tells you how you love and what you love. Discover a person's Venus sign and house placement. You have the key to his or her heart. Venus is also about aesthetics and our appreciation for finer things in life, such as art and music.
Which is why it's ruled by Taurus.
Yeah. So it's all about beauty and luxury, and all those fine things.
Again, this is a very feminine energied planet.
Definitely.
But yeah, so the Greek of this one is the Greek of it all. The Greek yogurt of it all. Venus, or the Greek Aphrodite, is the goddess of love, beauty, and relationships. So again, it's like a perfect match with the astrological meaning. The planet probably gets her name because she is so very bright and beautiful. Venus is intaking rather than outgoing and is ruled by Libra and Taurus. So yeah, Venus, I feel like affects me quite a lot. But like I just love all of the things that happens with Venus. And it just, a couple months ago, it moves from like behind the sun to in front of the sun every 18 months. And that's such a transformation period as well. Oh, it's like, just such a beautiful planet.
And like the visuals of that is so beautiful. Like, and what that means. Like,
yeah. It's just really, really nice. Yeah. You'll hear us talk about that in 18 months' time. Oh, well, less than 18 months now. But next time it happens, we'll do a whole episode on it. Very beautiful.
Okay, so next up is Mars. So Mars is the sexy planet. So Mars is powered by testosterone. Without Mars, nothing would get done. It is our fuel and our rocket, our determination and drive. Mars also governs our sex drive, what turns us on, and how we get what we want. The sign your Mars is in will give you an insight into the ways you chase your goals. Mars is the planet that's all about pursuit. What are you chasing in life? Your Mars will show you what you're after and also how to get it. Mars is about desire and action. Aggressive behavior, lust, anger are all Mars traits.
This is like if you've got like an ex that was like aggressive or abusive, look at where his Mars placement was, and maybe avoid those people.
Yeah, that's probably a good idea. So whatever your Mars sign is in and the house placement in your chart, that's sort of where and how it's heightened or lessened depending on where it is. Mars is arguably the most masculine planet and is the zodiacal partner of Venus. Yeah, if you're doing like a compatibility chart or something and you're trying to figure out your Bayes chart or something, your crush, or if you're in an actual relationship or whatever, yeah, definitely look at their moons or emotions, but definitely look at Venus and their Mars, because that'll show you how they love and how they like it in the bedroom, perhaps. For Mars.
But yeah, so Mars is also the god of war in classical mythology. So the first three that we've gone to, these are all the personal planets that are very much like you as an individual, very personally affected.
Yes, and then we move on to like relational planets.
Mars is how do you stand up for yourself. Venus is what do you like and what do you find attractive. And then Mercury is how do you think and communicate. So that's why they're like the personal planets, because those are like the crux of like what makes you who you are. So, yeah. And then moving on, we have the social planets, which is Jupiter and Saturn. I really like the combination of Jupiter and Saturn.
Me too.
So Jupiter is how do you deal with growth. And Jupiter was the king of the gods in classical mythology as well. So it's all about expansion, social opportunities, exploration, widening horizons, growth, justice, wisdom, opportunity, fortune, and abundance. Do you want to kind of talk about Jupiter, because you've had quite a few run-ins with Jupiter?
Yes. So Jupiter, its orbit is every 12 years. So if you've heard of your Saturn return, that's every 29 years, and there's also like all of your planets. Well, not all of them, because they're generational.
And what a return is just that planet being in the same place that it was when you were born.
Yes.
So it just means that planet has completed a full cycle.
Yes. So the sun, its orbit is 1 year. The moon is 27 1/3 days. So we say obviously 28 days. Mercury, it has a rotation of 88 days. Venus is 225. Mars is 687. And then Jupiter is 12 years, Saturn is 29 years, Uranus is 84 years, Neptune is 165 years, and Pluto is 248 years. So
and
yeah,
America's just coming up to their Pluto return soon as well, so we'll probably see the fall of something.
So that's what it's talking about in mundane astrology. Like a lot of astrologers are saying a lot of planets are coming up to their returns. So which means like we haven't dealt with whatever it is since 200 and however many years or whatever. So it's a pretty big deal to be in this time period. So Jupiter's usually a good thing. So
your Jupiter return, you mean?
Yeah, your Jupiter return's usually pretty great. It's
every
12 years. Yeah, like so many, great things happen usually. Yeah, so it means everything Jupiter touches is blessed. When you look at Jupiter in your chart, you're essentially looking at the good luck charm you were born with. Jupiter is the planet that endows you with the confidence to believe in yourself. It's the amplified planet, sometimes known as the Lotsa planet. I've never heard that.
Yeah, lots of luck.
Oh, okay. Jupiter is the planet of joy, freedom, and adventure, and it can see the big picture.
Because what's your Jupiter in?
I think it's in Yeah, I think it's in Scorpio.
Oh, no, so that makes sense because I'm just reading this here and it says if Jupiter is particularly challenged in a natal chart by placement and or aspects of other planets, it can express its opposite.
Yeah.
And show someone who is stingy and wants more than their share.
So your Jupiter is where you take chances and seize opportunities. This massive planet helps you grow. Growth isn't always happy days. But wherever you find your Jupiter in a person's chart is where they like to have fun as well.
Yeah.
Jupiter has two sides. On one hand, the vibe is jolly, cheerful, and a Father Christmas vibe. On the other hand, it is all about faith and seeking life's meaning.
Because I think that that's the whole thing with, like, you would read what Jupiter means and then be like, oh, that doesn't relate to me. And then you actually look at where your Jupiter is in your chart and then it's like,
and what it's
literally
conjunct.
the exact opposite.
Literally.
Like, Jupiter is like how you deal with your growth. And it's like, if it's in Scorpio, it's going to be like a lot different than someone with Jupiter in like Libra.
Yeah, Jupiter can also exaggerate wildly, overdo excessively, and tip from confidence to arrogance. Wherever you find Jupiter in someone's chart is where he or she can get all the glory for being awesome or come across as arrogant and a sullen sign.
Yeah. And these are the social planets, so it's like how you deal with like groups of people and all of that type of stuff as well. And your Saturn is I find Saturn to be the scariest planet. Fucking terrifies me. Saturn scares me more than ghosts.
Well, yeah.
More than Pluto.
Saturn's like, if you don't have your shit together,
it'll make you
get your shit together.
Yeah, no, Saturn is like,
sometimes it's painful.
Saturn's daddy issues.
Yeah.
You know? And my dad and I have the same Saturn.
Wild.
Yeah, both in retrograde. Saturn is how you deal with responsibility. So Saturn's always described as like the structure and like the foundations.
And I always think, like, if you know tarot, I always think of the tower.
Yeah.
So the tower card is quite terrifying. It's like a literal tower, and usually it's on a rocky ground underneath like the sea, or the sea's crazy water, like crazy waves around, and it's like everything's falling down, everything's crashing. So basically it's like if you haven't got the right foundations,
you'll just fall and collapse.
Everything is gonna fall around you. Like you can't build something on a rocky foundation.
Yeah, and you just need like boundaries. And Saturn returns is probably one of the biggest things that you go through in your
so Saturn's a 29-year cycle.
Yeah, so you usually can match up people's midlife crises with usually their second Saturn return, but some people will go through a midlife crisis when they're like between 29 and 30. Yeah, my Saturn's in my 12th house in Taurus. So, yeah, it fucking terrifies me too.
Yeah, and my Saturn is in Pisces in the 5th house.
Hopefully your Saturn return will be better than your Jupiter one. And also, if you have your Saturn in retrograde, it means that you may face like unfair situations, difficulties with authority, daddy issues.
And it's usually when you become your own daddy, as in you be like, okay, I've tried this for so long, cut the shit, let's just do it properly or whatever, you know.
Because when you're born and getting raised, you only use the same tools as your parents gave you. Like, you will respond to things in the same way that your parents respond to things because that's the only thing that you've seen. And then it's like you get until the end of your 20s and then it's like you need to figure out how you are supposed to do things. And if you don't understand how you're supposed to do things yourself, like, your parents aren't there to support you anymore. Like, they're not going to be there to pick up all of the pieces and tell you what to do all of the time. You need to figure out how to do those things by yourself and how to use your own toolkit and find out what coping mechanisms work for you. So it's like, if you haven't figured that out before you get to your Saturn return, you're going to be put in a situation where that forces you to do that. Yeah. So that's why I'm really trying to get all of my coping mechanisms figured out before my Saturn return. So that my Saturn return, nothing traumatic happens.
It's like, if you're slowly working towards it, I think you shouldn't be scared, because
if you know that it's coming,
and you're making steps to be better, and work through those well before your Saturn return or wherever you're at, I think it'll be less of a blow.
And another thing that like people always recommend is not to get married before your Saturn return. I fucked that up, didn't I? I did it before my next Jupiter return. So, because you don't know who you're going to be without those tools. You might struggle when you go through your Saturn return. You might find that the people you were surrounding with, you don't want to associate with anymore because you've just changed.
You've grown, yeah. So Saturn has a fearsome reputation as the taskmaster of the zodiac. Saturn is the stench. The stench of reality up your nose.
That's so accurate.
It's literally.
It's like the most intrusive scent.
And you can't avoid it.
Yeah.
It's the hard facts and the lessons you didn't want to learn. Wherever you have your Saturn in your chart, you must face the music and work hard. It's where you have a lot of lessons coming to you in this lifetime. At least once you know the placement of your Saturn, you'll more or less know where to expect those challenges. And the challenges that you overcome are the lessons that you hone into a more involved being.
Yeah, and I think that, like, as I said, if you listen to our last episode, I used to hate Tauruses. And, like, I hated them so much because I saw myself in them. And I think that that's also because I have a Taurus, my Saturn. I think that that's one of the big things that I'm going to have to work through is my Taurus energy and understanding that better and being able to cope with it and not being as judgmental and stubborn and all of that, because I feel like that's the type of shit that's really going to bite me in the ass when my Saturn return comes. So
yeah, so Saturn is about structure, challenges, and our fears, as well as being the planet in our chart that governs work and discipline. Saturn is the slowest moving planet that can be seen with the naked eye. He was once known as the karma planet and is all about you reap what you sow.
Yeah, that's on everything that I've ever read about about Saturn, it always has that quote.
Yeah. Learn a Saturn lesson, change your behavior, and change your karma. Oh, and it also says that's just one side of Saturn, though. Saturn's feminine side is a wise old crone. She may no longer be a beauty, but she doesn't care. That she's beyond all that.
When I think about like Saturn as like a human, it's like a grandparent.
Yeah.
Like it's them being like, this is what you've got to do.
Yeah.
I told you that this is how it works. You've got to do it. Even though you're like, no, you just don't get it. Like, you're not up with the times.
You're not young like me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And they're like always like
naive.
Yeah. come through with the facts.
So the next one is Uranus.
Yeah. This is my husband's favorite planet.
Uranus.
You think you're so funny. You're hilarious.
I'm so funny. So,
but these are the modern planets. So they're considered to reflect entire generations of people, and they are most noticeable in the natal chart when they have major aspects with the personal planets. So when you're looking at your chart, it's not necessarily like, oh my god, my Neptune is in this, or my Uranus is in this. It's more like, oh, my Uranus is like conjunct my sun, or sextile my moon, or like stuff like that. You want to look at how it's interacting with your more personal planets, rather than being like, oh my god, I can't believe that I have a Sagittarius Pluto, because that's just everyone in Gen Z.
Yeah. So Uranus is where you have a lot to learn / what scares you.
It's all about breaking boundaries. So literally breaking through what Saturn has restricted.
So wherever you have Uranus in your chart, you want to break free of this. It's where you're going to do things your way, where you don't really care too much what anyone else thinks. Freedom is a key word for Uranus. This is one planet that absolutely doesn't want to be fenced in. Wherever you have Uranus in your chart, you're striving for independence. If someone has Uranus very prominent in their chart, for example, if it's right on their ascendant or the same place as their sun, so this is what Billy was saying before, that you really need to look at where it is in relation to your personal planets. So yeah, for example, if it's right on your ascendant or the same place as your sun, chances are that they are surprising and different, probably in a really good way. It's all about liberation. It destroys traditions and breaks down authority. As a result, Uranus is the planet of modernity.
At the moment, Uranus is in Taurus.
Yeah.
So that's very like structures and like all of that type of stuff. So it's very much like relevant to what's kind of going on in the world with the political standing of a lot of countries. Yeah, so it is named after the ancient Greek entity of the sky, the father of Saturn and the grandfather of Zeus. Uranus is ruled by Aquarius. That's really funny because it's my Aquarius husband's, that's his favorite planet.
Totally.
Yeah.
Oh
So yeah, Uranus is happiest in Aquarius and least happy, and it's opposite in Scorpio. Next up, we've got Neptune. It was actually discovered in 1846. Been around for a while.
well, yeah, it has been around.
Neptune is all about inspiration or delusion.
It's where, it says a quote, where I can't be controlled.
Mm-hmm.
So, Neptune is the inspirational planet of dreams and soulmate. In whichever house you find Neptune in your chart is the area where you romanticize life. Neptune is about the divine. It's also about drugs and alcohol. But how do these go together? Understand this and you'll understand Neptune and astrology a little bit better. Neptune is about deception at one end of the spectrum and about fantasy at the other.
This one's talking about how it's like, so obviously there's the personal planet, Venus, which is all about personal love and how you deal with it, but it's saying how Neptune is kind of the higher octave of Venus. So the god of the sea in Greek mythology, which obviously like how you get the name Neptune. It's like, obviously, when I think of Neptune, I just think of mermaids, so.
Do you?
Yeah, kind of like Triton and stuff. So, therefore, Neptune is highly compassionate, idealistic, and imaginative. It's considered a planet of inspiration, dreams. Neptune rules spirituality and all things subdue. So, it would be interesting to look up what Neptune was in, like, at the founding of the Catholic Church and stuff. Because it's all about, like, from what I'm reading here, it's all about, like, religion, confusion, illusion, all of that type of stuff. So it would be interesting, like, even looking at what happened when the Catholic Church split, and then there was, like, the Lutheran creation, because that was all about, like, breaking away from the deceptiveness and all of that. It's like, there's so many things you can look into. You just need to know.
It's so interesting because I find you'll be like, I wonder, and you'll guess it. You'll be like, oh, maybe, like, it'd be wild if this was in this house or whatever. And then you look it up and you're just like, it is.
It is. Or like, this is something we might talk about in more detail in another episode, but, like, Elise and I were just talking about, like, some of the serial killers that are purely, like, sexually motivated.
Oh yeah, shout out to Killer Astrology Podcast. I love your work. It's my new favorite podcast. I've been learning.
I really want her to talk about this though, because she hasn't touched on this. What I've kind of found is Venus in Scorpio in retrograde in the 12th house. If you have all of those things,
probably a serial killer.
Well, because we were looking at it, and maybe skip forward 10 seconds if you don't want to hear stuff.
Yeah, if you're squeamish.
If you're squeamish, like, so there was a guy called the Butcher in Russia that went around, like, raping kids and gouging their eyes out and, like, doing all that weird stuff. There was a guy that chopped off people's heads and had sex with them because he had mummy issues. Ted Bundy and a few other ones that are, like trauma.
Sexual trauma.
Happened in their childhood. And now they're like, or Ted Bundy, he had a bad childhood, but it wasn't.
Well, we're pretty, people are pretty sure that his mum was his mum, but his granddad was his dad.
Yeah. So it's like the taboo and the secrecy of Scorpio, and then you put the 12th house in it, and it's like they can't talk about it.
Murky waters.
Yeah, because they're not able to express their deepest sexual desires, and so then it builds up and they feel restricted. And then if it's in retrograde, it's just fucked even more. And then it's like, then they usually, like, express it in a weird way. So it's kind of, like, interesting when you, like, look at a lot of people's charts and you're like, wow, that's a very distinct pattern. Mm-hmm. In saying that, though, I was freaking terrified as soon as we found it out, because we just kept on looking up serial killers that killed, like, the Toy Box Killer was another one, massive serial killer in America, like, people that had killed, like, 40, 50 people.
Who was that guy that when he was a young boy, he was kidnapped and made marry that young girl who was dead.
Oh, that was another guy in did he have a
He had a
yeah. So
Scorpio.
this
Although I think I can't remember correctly, it was either Scorpio and Venus in the 12th house or it was in the 6th house.
But
in
he-
the relationship.
yes, he was on a school excursion and then he got like kidnapped, but like not really kidnapped. He got like taken off the street by this family and they were having a viewing, like when you show the dead body in their backyard. Yeah. And they forced him to marry the dead girl because they believed that she wouldn't get to heaven unless she was married. So then he had to kiss a corpse. And then so he like, obviously that's a huge trauma and he would have gone through his life believing that all of these young kids that died because they weren't married aren't going into heaven, or like, even if he didn't believe that, that's some level of trauma.
And also he was just like given back. So like
Yeah,
his
then
family didn't believe him that like this crazy shit just happened.
Yeah, and he didn't get like the proper kind of support. Like no negative repercussions happened to the family that forced him into this. And what he went and did was he walked around. I think he was from Russia. He walked around the entire country and wrote down every single gravestone of every single person because he wanted each of them to be remembered. And he was.
Oh my god, did he do that?
Yeah, he did it on foot.
Oh.
That's what I mean. I love this guy, but he's fucked. Like, I feel bad for him because he was. I know what he did was all out of the best intentions, but what he did that was bad was he would like go out, and it started with him like sleeping in the graves next to these young girls that died because obviously he could see, and he would see that their graves hadn't been tended to and see that the families had stopped visiting because it was all overgrown, and as I said, he was doing this all on foot. And what he would do is he would dig up the bodies, make them into dolls, and then he had dolls all in his house, and he got found and he just had all of these dolls of these young little girls all in his house, and he would just talk to them all, and he had like relationships. He would like, it wasn't, from what I understand, nothing was sexual was ever done, but he would like sleep with the dolls, talk to the dolls, and like half of the parents of those kids were like absolutely horrified that had happened and like were really upset, but then the other half of the families were actually kind of happy that their kids got someone that cared about them. Because obviously they stopped going to the graves, and that's why he took them. And so they were just happy that they had someone to talk to and someone that appreciated them and like learnt about them. And as I said, he documented all of their life story and he was like hugely renowned in like the historical society for all of the work that he did before he was found out to be a weirdo.
So did he end up killing anyone?
No, he never killed anyone. He was just
a weirdo trying to deal with this shit.
Yeah.
Oh wow.
I know. There's some really weird criminals that like, and like the German cannibal that he also was a Scorpio Venus.
Was he?
Yeah, he had a guy's penis. But the guy volunteered and forced him to eat his penis. So I'm like, I don't know whether I feel bad or not. Because he didn't even like the penis. He ended up giving it to his dog because he didn't want to eat it. But the guy forced him to.
That's animal abuse. What the fuck?
But yeah, so...
We've gone on a tangent.
Yeah, we've gone on a tangent. I then freaked the fuck out. I was like, if I ever meet anyone with a Venus in Scorpio, they're going to kill me. I'm so scared. Like, I don't want to know about that. Like, they're obviously very sexually perverted. Like, something's wrong with them. And then turns out my dad, my auntie, and my husband's best friend all have Scorpio and Venus.
Well, it's like...
So it's never everyone. It's more so like, okay, you can have that one aspect, but then it's everything else also really affecting it. And then it's also like the nurture versus nature kind of thing, where it's like, did something traumatic happen to them that made them feel like they needed to be more secretive or deceptive in it, or needed to enhance it more? Yeah. Because like, people don't go out into the world being like, oh, I just want to be eaten, or I want to dig up little girls and make them into dolls. Like,
yeah, it manifests differently.
Yeah.
So if you have a Scorpio and Venus, it's okay.
It's okay, but you might want to go to therapy.
Just like
if something happened that's traumatizing, get therapy, get help, because it can manifest into really bad things.
Yeah. That's the thing with astrology. It's like, it's good to look at the patterns and see what you're dealing with, how it can manifest. If it's manifesting in your life, find the tools to work through it and what works best for you personally, and do that. Because, like, I feel like most of the time it's, like, the people who end up being serial killers or something is because society's telling them they're not good enough. That's wrong.
And it's the generational trauma.
Yeah.
Because
to suppress everything.
Like the toy box killer, he went around with his main accomplice was his daughter.
Wow.
So it's like him passing down his Scorpio Venus, he's passing that on to his daughter. I wasn't able to find his daughter's chart because she's actually a free woman at the moment.
Disappeared.
So they've hidden all of her identity stuff, so I couldn't get her birth chart.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's really, really wild to see how it all plays into parts. And like, because I feel like astrology can sometimes provide you more than psychology. Whereas,
I feel like psychologists sometimes they focus on the trauma too much.
Yes.
And it's like, yes, you need to go through it and acknowledge it.
But that has happened.
Yeah. And then you need to move forward.
Yeah.
Where it's just reliving the trauma over and over and over again is not going anywhere.
Yeah, it's like you're living constantly in retrograde. So yeah, I think that's where it comes in handy as well. So instead of you being like, oh, I have anxiety, I have depression, these are just things that I have to live with, it's like, oh no, this phase is, I'm just going through this transition. Like obviously mental health is a real thing. Like people do have anxiety for their whole lives. Like I'm not trying to discredit that, but it's like, no, well, what can you do in these certain times and these certain phases to try and help you build and grow through that trauma?
Yeah, don't get me started on fucking doctors and psychology and everything like that.
Yeah.
Mental health assessments.
Anyway, back to Pluto, our last planet.
Prescriptions. Don't even.
She works at a pharmacy, so she knows all about prescriptions. Pluto is our last planet.
I love Pluto.
Pluto.
It is technically not a planet, but we still call it a planet because it needs to be involved.
You fucking know for a fact, if my kids ever need to make a diagram of the solar system, they're going to be making Pluto.
Yes.
I don't care. Because everyone's like, oh, Pluto's not a planet because it's shrinking. It's like Mercury's shrinking faster than Pluto is, you know? But anyway, Pluto actually links up with all of our generations. So Gen Z, all of theirs are Sag, Pluto's in Sag. All of the millennials are Scorpios. And it goes back that way. So you can really see like a whole generation's trauma. And because at the moment, Pluto's in Capricorn. So all of the kids and stuff that are being born now and all of the Sagittariuses that are experiencing the Capricorn Pluto is the reflection of the uprising that we're seeing from the youth at the moment, which is really, really interesting.
So cool to see.
Yeah. And so then the next thing that we're going to see is going to be the Capricorn children with the Aquarius. So I think that's going to be the most exciting one.
It's going to be
such a growth because they're going to be Capricorn. They're going to be very, very strong-minded, very, very strong-willed, but they're going to have the inventiveness of the Aquarius energy at that time. And then we're going to have the Aquarius kids. Oh, and I'm so excited.
It's like a combo of like smart spirituality as well. Like,
yeah,
just like
it's
boss bitch spiritual combo.
Yeah, and because we're really going to see the end of this Pluto cycle, and then it's going to begin again in Aries. It's going to be really, really awesome to see how that's all developed. Because like my grandparents, their Pluto was in Leo, and so that was like after the wars and stuff, and all kind of that generation. So it's really interesting to see not only how that generation is, but like how when they were in their like early 20s, what they brought to society. Like the millennials, so the Scorpios, they brought the Me Too movement. And so they brought the Me Too movement when it was in Sagittarius, but they were Scorpios. And then the Sagittarius reinforced that with being like, well, we shouldn't just rise up against people that have been sexually abused. We should rise up for all women's rights. We should rise up for, and so then we had like all of the women's pay gap movement. And now with the Sagittarius now in Capricorn, we're going through like the Black Lives Matter movements and all of the exposure of the government corruption. We're seeing all of the talk about the environment and the planet, and like Aquarius is going to bring so much like renewable energy. Like I think that's when we're really going to see the big shift from
Yeah, it's like everything's becoming exposed.
Yeah, because we're going into Aquarius like quite soon.
Mm-hmm.
Not like very soon, but it's like in the next couple years.
Yeah, in 2024.
Yeah, because
I mean it's a long time, but also it's not like.
Because I remember I was like looking it up and I was like, I was kind of freaking out because I was like, oh my god, my kids are probably going to be in different generations. Yeah, it goes into Aquarius in 2023. So literally in
2023. Yeah.
In 3 years.
And
we're
you
going
might
to have
think,
an Aquarius Pluto. I'm so fucking excited.
You might think that it's like, you know, that's not a lot of time. Oh, that's far away. But like, there's a lot of work to be done, and we not want to do it right.
Yeah, and we've got to get through that work. Otherwise, we're not going to be able to renew.
Mm.
And I think everyone's so used to the small cycles of like us changing our sun sign every month and being like, well, I don't really notice the difference between Leo season and Virgo season, but like these are big planets. Like Pluto's a small planet, but these are big energies that like are so far away from us that their effect is magnified so much. I think a good way to kind of think about it is like, instead of like the sun sign having the people that were born in like that month, it's like it has the people that were born in that entire generation.
Mm-hmm.
And that whole movement is happening to them at the same time. Like, oh, it gets me so excited. I'm so sorry. But yeah, so.
But also, we just want to acknowledge, like, a lot of people are going through a really hard time this year. And, like, we're not saying that, oh, we're so excited, like, of what's happening. Obviously, like, there's always good and bad. And, like, obviously, some really heartbreaking and terrible stuff has been going on this year. But I guess we're just trying to see the positivity that's going to come from that. And it's like, there's duality in everything. There's always going to be a negative and a positive. And
I think from us on our like personal levels from astrology, we've really learnt that the harder shit is, the better it is. Like,
yeah, the better
the outcome is.
Yeah.
So like, it's like if we weren't going through all of the shit that we're going through right now, we're not going to be able to make the changes that we needed to change.
Mm-hmm.
Otherwise, because we don't want to just keep on living in a fantasy world where we pretend everything's fine when it's not. We need these moments to break down everything and rebuild, because the fun part of life and like society is growth. And I feel like with the society that we were in like 2019 was so structured and so routine that nothing ever changed. And it's like, well, now we're getting to rebuild and remodel, and we're really going to see a whole new society come through.
New world.
And from an astrology perspective, mid-December, this should all be over.
I mean, over in the literal sense, maybe not in the literal sense, but like the vast majority of it, the shit show of 2020 should be over by December-ish.
Yeah.
We're not saying the pandemic's going to be over, but hopefully it's gonna ease. It looks like it's gonna ease, and things are going to be coming into play to sort of make sure that never happens again. Or if it does, we'll be better prepared.
Yeah, because hopefully we won't do what we did 100 years ago and just pretend that this never happened.
Yeah, exactly.
Because
blame
Saturn's
the country and be like, nah, your fault, not us.
Yeah, because we're kind of get a glimpse of what our Aquarius Pluto is going to be like, because Saturn is moving into Aquarius at the end of mid-December as well. So that's going to be a big change as well. But yeah, Pluto. We're already kind of started, but
it's about transformation, healing, as we said, passion and power. So Pluto is the lord of the underworld and not a planet to be trifled with. Mm-hmm. On the upside, Pluto is also a fantastic magician and is responsible for any transformation we affect in our lives. Pluto represents birth, death, and rebirth cycle. Mm-hmm. It's the planet that detoxifies.
Did you hear that one? Detoxifies.
Got an issue? Trust Pluto to flush out the toxins.
Yeah, so that's what we mean with like it going through the whole zodiac cycle in our lifetime is so exciting, because we're going to see the death and the rebirth of it. And
so you might think all this sounds very dark and cruel and brutal, and there's no doubt that controlling and manipulating Pluto can be all of those things, but Pluto in your chart also shows you where you can change your world.
And because in Greek mythology it correlates with the god Hades, so it's the god of the underworld. Pluto's also ruled by Scorpio, so I think that's why.
That's probably why I love.
Yeah. So it's
love healing and transformation.
Yeah. So it's very much
Even
like
though
a
it hurt.
Scorpio energy as well. But thank you for listening to our episode. I know that we were just supposed to go through the planets, but we did go on little bits of
We always go on tangents.
But hopefully you don't mind. We really, really appreciate all of the support and love that we're getting, and just hope that you guys are enjoying it as much as we are making.
And also, with our like the little side episodes that we're doing, whose sign is it anyway? We did the Taylor Swift folklore edition. Obviously, if you don't like Taylor Swift and you didn't listen to that, that's fine.
We're talking about Elise's mum.
Yeah,
calling her
Liana.
out.
Listen, she listened to the album. She liked the album. She didn't want to listen to the episode.
Yeah, she just didn't want to listen to us talk about it.
But yeah, if you have any suggestions for that as well, we might be doing the Mamma Mia cast in the future, Hamilton, just fun things like that. We did Friends in the first episode, but we sort of kept it with that first episode just for funsies. But yeah, any suggestions, that'll be very fun. Thank you for listening to the 13 Sign podcast, and may the planets be ever in your favor.